In this video, I will discuss how to organize categorical data. So let's first talk about a summary table. A summary table tallies the frequencies or percentages of items in a set of categories so that you can see differences between categories. So here's an example. The Consumer Financial Protection Bureau reports on consumer financial product and service complaint submissions by state, category, and company. The following table represents complaints received from Louisiana consumers by complaint category for 2016. So as you can see, they have the category, bank account, number for complaints 202, credit card was 175 complaints, all the way down to other, which is 72 complaints. So with this summary table, they want you to compute the percentage of complaints for each category. So if you wanted to do this by hand, you can actually calculate this by hand with StatCrunch and with Excel. So I'm going to show you all three. So first, let's total up the number of complaints. We have 2,165. To figure out the percent, what you'll do is you're going to take each one of these numbers and divide by the total amount. Okay. So if I took 202 divided by 2,165, I get 0.093. You move the decimal over twice and you'll get your percent, 9.3%. So I'm not going to write out each one, but I will put the answer up for each one. For the second one, we have 132, and when we divide that out, I get 0.061, which is 6.1%. So I'll write out the answers for each one of these. The next one should be 8.1%. That's for the credit card. For the credit reporting, that should be 26.8. For the debt collection, that should be 22.4. Let's see. For the mortgage, that should be 20.4. Make sure I put my percent. For the student loan, that should be 3.5%. And for other, it should be 3.3%. Okay, so like I said, you take each number and divide it by the total, move your decimal over, and you'll get your percent. Another way you can do this is in StatCrunch. So if you look over here on the left hand side, I have my category and my complaints. Okay. So what I'm going to do is, there's really not a command that will do this directly. You have to kind of trick StatCrunch into doing this. So we're going to go to Graph, Bar Plot with Summary. And this box will come up and you're going to select your categories. So my categories is in the column that's titled Category, and the counts are in the column titled Complaints. Okay. The type of calculation that I want to do is a percent. And to make this easy, I'm going to have it display the value above the bar. So basically what happens is it is going to compute a bar plot, and you'll have your percentages on top. Now, a lot of the categories didn't show up, but if you put your mouse over the bar, it'll pop up. So like for this first one, it says bank account, and at the top is 9.3%. Okay. The next one, it doesn't have the name along the vertical axis, but that should be consumer loan. When you put your mouse over it, it'll actually say consumer loan. And as you can see, the percent also pops up. So it looks like they rounded the percent to one decimal point. So that's 6.1. Another one, if you look down here, it doesn't have a title here for the 3.5, but if you put your mouse over it, it'll say student loan. So that's 3.5%. So as you can see, these values match up to what we calculated by hand. Okay. Another way you can do this is in Excel. Now you don't have to use Excel, and the reason why I enforce it in Excel is because when you go out into the real world, you won't have access to StatCrunch. StatCrunch is an educational software. So, but if you're in the business world, you'll likely have access to Excel. Okay, so let's see if we can do this in Excel. So I got my categories and my complaints. The one thing I don't have is my total. So what I'm going to do is I'm going to put total, and then I'm going to have Excel calculate my sum. So the command for the sum is equal sum. Then I'll put a parentheses. Then I need to indicate what numbers do I want to add up. So I'm going to click the first cell. I'm going to hit the shift button and go all the way down to the last cell. I close it out with another parentheses and hit equal, and I get the 2,165, which is what we calculated before. So now to figure out the percent, I'm going to type equal, and what I want is I want this first cell to be divided by 2,165. So what I'll do is I'm going to take cell B2 because that's where the first number is located, and as you can see, it highlights the B2. I'm going to divide that by 2,165, and I hit enter, and it gives me a decimal. However, I can format this to a percent. So if I click on the cell and right click it, I get an option. If you go down, it says format cells, and I want this to be a percent. So this is percentage, and let's say I wanted to go out 2 decimal places. You can change the number of decimal places to what you want. So I'm going to go ahead and let it be 2 decimal places. And I'm going to hit OK. And as you can see, it changed it to a percent. Well, I don't want to type out this command on each cell. So what I'll do is I'll have Excel do it for me. So I'm going to click on this box, and if you go to the corner, like the bottom corner, your mouse should change into a little plus sign. And what I'll do is I'm going to drag it down so it'll calculate all the cells for me. Okay? And you should get the same answers that we got when we did it by hand and when we did it by StatCrunch. And so in this case, it's 2 decimal places. If I wanted to go out 1, I can put 1, but I just put 2 for this one. All right, so now let's talk about a contingency table. A contingency table is used to study patterns that may exist between the responses of 2 or more categorical variables. It cross-tabulates or tallies jointly the responses of the categorical variables. For 2 variables, the tallies for one variable are located in the rows, and the tallies for the second variable are located in the columns. So here's an example. This is a contingency table. It's a random sample of 400 invoices that were drawn, and each invoice is categorized as small, medium, or large. And each invoice is also examined to identify if there were any errors or not. And this data is then organized into a contingency table. So this is what you see over here to the right. So as I stated before, you have categories in the rows. These are the rows. And then you have categories in the columns. You got errors and no errors. And then what it'll do is, what you'll see here is your total for the columns, and then your total for the rows. And down here is your overall total. Okay. So you may have a question that will ask you to calculate the percentage based on the overall total. All right. So this is your data right in here. And to calculate the percent on the overall total is you're going to take each one of these numbers and divide it by 400 because the overall total is 400. So if you took the first one, this number here, 170, you took 170 divided by 400, you get 42.5. If you took the next one, 100. You took 100 divided by 400, you get 25%. So as you can see, you list the percentages in here. Okay. And then you can also do the same for the total. You take 190 divided by 400 and you'll get the 47.5. Okay? But for the most part, I'm looking at the data within the body of the contingency tables. So if you look at it, 83.75% of sample invoices have no errors, and 47.5% of sample invoices are for small amounts. And you get this when you look at the totals. All right, so how do we do this in StatCrunch? So let's go back to StatCrunch, and I have this information over here on the left. As you can see, I do not have a total column. I don't have a total row as well. I took that out because once I have StatCrunch calculated for me, the total columns will come back in. So to do this in StatCrunch, what we're going to do is we are going to go to Stat, Tables, Contingency, and we want this with summary because the data has already been summarized for me. The columns for this table will be the errors and the no errors. Those are my columns. And the size will be my, if I can move it over, if you guys can see it. The size will be my row because I got small, medium, and large. So I'm going to have my row be size. All right, so the columns are the errors and no errors. The rows will be the size, and it's 3 sizes, but we have it under size. And we are going to look at percent of total. Percent of total. So I want to highlight that, and as you can see, it calculates the percentages for me. So, and as you can see, it also brings up the total columns back in there. So we get 42.5, 5%, and so on. So these are the same numbers that we would have gotten if you had done it by hand, but you can have StatCrunch do it for you. You can ignore this chi-square test. That's something different. Okay. Now let's look at this table again, and this time we want to calculate, we want to look at the contingency table based on percentage of row. Percentage of row. So this time we are going to look at these totals. Okay, you can go down here if you want, but we're going this way. We're looking at row percentages. So what you'll do is you're going to take each number in each row and divide it by the total of that row. So for example, this 170, we're going to take 170 divided by the total of that row, which is 190. When we divide it out, we get 89.47%. We're going to do it here for this one, 100. The total for that row is 140. So 100 divided by 140 is 71.43. All right, so you just go straight across and divide it by the totals. Right? And as you can see, you have your numbers filled out here at the bottom. And you can look at this and draw some conclusions. It says medium invoices have a larger chance, 28.57, of having errors than smaller invoices or larger invoices. So the 28.57, if you look here, we're comparing this here. So under errors, the medium size has a better or more of a chance of having errors than the smaller ones, because the smaller ones have a 10.53% and the larger ones have a 7.14%. Okay. So how do we do this in StatCrunch? Okay, so let's go back. This time I'm still going to go to Stat, Tables, Contingency with Summary. And once again, my categories will be, my columns will be errors, no errors, and my row will be the size. And this time I want to do a row percent. Okay, so where it says display, we're going to do a row percent. And when we hit compute, as you can see, it calculates the percentages in the parentheses. So when I spoke earlier, we said something about 28.57 for the medium errors. Um, and then that's the number we got here, 28.57. We got 10.53, and then the 7.14 for the large. So these numbers match up to what we did by hand. All right. The last one talks about contingency table based on percentage of column totals. So this time we're looking at columns. We're looking at these. And this time we're going to divide each number here by the bottom row, by the column totals. So if we look at this first one, we're going to take 170 and divide it by the column total of 335. We get 50.75%. We're going to do the same thing. Let's say we had this here, 20. We got the 20, and we're going to divide by the total here, which is 65. We get 30.77. So this time you're just going to use the bottom row to divide by. And you can do some analysis. This says this is a 61.54% chance with that invoices where errors are of medium size. So this looks here, this is the largest one in here. So that's why it states that invoices with errors of medium size will have a 61.54% chance of having errors. Okay, so how do we do this in StatCrunch? Okay, we're going to go back and we're going to do tables, contingency with summary. Once again, my columns are no errors and errors. My row is size. And this time I want to do a column percent. When I hit compute, my numbers pop up in parentheses as well as the total amounts. Okay, and this is how you would get your answers. All right, so if you get a problem like this in your homework in my lab, you can export the data into your StatCrunch. And when you do it in StatCrunch, make sure you take out the total column and the total row. Those have to be deleted out. And then you can do the calculations and they will pop back up. Okay.